Hello there, and welcome to another edition of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm B.C. Cloutier, President of Action for Life, and this is Father Michael Orsi. A little frog in my throat there, Father, but we'll cure that up. How are you this fine day?
I am marvelous.
Glad to hear. Marvelous.
Marvelous.
As the girls from Long Island
In Long
would say.
Island.
Father, the other day I was thinking, I wasn't thinking about it, it's in the news everywhere. Fentanyl started me thinking about all of the deaths and destruction that come from drugs, prostitution, alcoholism, etc. And so I went to the Bible and I kind of searched for, what was said about that 2,000 years ago. And if I may, I'll quote from Galatians chapter 5. Now the works of the flesh are obvious: fornication, impurity, licentiousness, idolatry, sorcery, enmities, strife, jealousy, anger, quarrels, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and things like these. I am warning you, as I warned you before, those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. I guess there are a lot of people that we would almost say they're beyond saving. They're completely addicted to drugs. We see it on the streets of our major cities, sadly, prostitution, etc. But there has to be something that we can do, it seems to me, Father. I mean, the war on drugs and all the other money that the federal government throws at these issues, it has no real effect. There are some programs. One of them is in Naples, St. Matthew's House, the alcohol rehabilitation program. We know has terrific results, but it's faith-based, it's Christian-based. What can we do to, you and me and the people watching, what can we do to address these issues?
Okay. First of all, we have to be clear that government programs are not working. As a matter of fact, what government is doing at this point regarding the drug problem, especially because fentanyl has been killing so many Americans, government is entering into what they call harm reduction. And that simply means that, people can take drugs. We'll help them to take their drugs in a way that's going to be safe. And even if they overdose, we'll give them Narcan. And that way they can reverse the effects of the overdose.
In essence, we'll give junkies clean needles so they can continue to be junkies, but they won't get AIDS.
Correct.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. It doesn't work. The number of drug users has increased and it has not decreased. Now, when we talk about drug or alcohol use, we'll talk a little while about prostitution problem too, is people do not become addicts overnight. People do not become alcoholics overnight. Now, in the case of alcoholism, it very well may be there's a genetic predisposition toward it. But people that become full-blown alcoholics at least have to begin to start drinking and then become addicted to the alcohol. With drugs, it is a little bit more clear-cut. And what do I mean by that? With drugs, people are making a free will decision to take the drug. Now, oftentimes, people begin with pot. Oh, there's no problem with pot. It's a harmless drug. Folks, don't believe it. When people begin to smoke pot, children especially begin to smoke pot, it has an effect on the brain, and we call it a gateway drug. And that means it leads to bigger and worse things. We're at a point now in our society where addiction is prevalent. And as I said, oftentimes government is not the solution. As a matter of fact, it's more of the problem if I'm making drug paraphernalia available to you now. And this way, well, at least the needles that you use are going to be clean needles. This is again, harm reduction. In the beginning, this is something that has been going on for a long time. These terms seep into the vocabulary of people who are trying to fix the drug problem. And guess who was behind this harm reduction very early? George Soros. It was called the Lynn Smith Institute, and I was on the Governor's Advisory Council for AIDS in Trenton, New Jersey. Governor Whitman was the governor at that time, and it was me and I think one assemblyman from North Jersey who fought 20 other people regarding needle exchange. So this has been around a long time. There is big money behind this. I think I can safely say that the big money is also finding its way into the pockets of politicians. When you hear a politician who all of a sudden is favoring legalization of marijuana, there's something more going on there. Wink, wink, okay? Pay attention to what I'm saying. Now, the fentanyl crisis has really brought this to a head. I mean, the number of people that are dying of fentanyl, it's exponential.
Yeah.
And it's people like young people, but also people who are in their 40s. And I have walked in, unfortunately, on cases where people have died of fentanyl. And I've gone to wakes and funerals of people who died on fentanyl. And the family would say to me, we didn't know that he had a heart condition. Folks, it ain't a heart condition. The fentanyl attacked the heart, and the heart stopped beating. So last year was over 100,000 people died of fentanyl. But as I said in the beginning of this discussion, with drugs, it is a matter of making a choice. It's free will. I have decided to smoke that pipe, crack. I decided to take the crack. I decided to smoke the cigarette. I decided to... It also gets involved with vaping. It starts off with vaping, too. This is a big thing with kids these days. So it's that initial bad choice. And eventually, because it does affect the brain, I don't know if there is free choice anymore after a certain period of time,
right,
because the addiction takes over. The body craves it. The brain needs it in order to function, because the natural receptors in the brain that would calm a person down, that would relieve pain, they go dead, and they need then the drug to take over to give them a feeling of peace and to take away pain in their lives. Now that's just a brief summary of what takes place. So what do we do about it? And that's your question. What do we do about it? It has to be faith-based. And we have a wonderful program here in Naples, but it's open to people around the country. It's at a place called St. Matthew's House. And
Justin's place, right?
Justin's place for the men and Jill's place for the women. And it's a year-long program. It's a long time, but it's based on the Bible and it's based on faith. And it's only with Jesus that people are going to overcome their addictions.
Well, I wanted to point out a year, not 6 weeks.
Now, 6 weeks doesn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah,
4 weeks, 6 weeks, the insurance companies keep paying for these things, and then they kick people out because they don't want to pay anymore.
Right.
And then there's recidivism.
Yeah. People go away. Families say, I can't take you anymore. Or they find themselves losing their job. They're out on the street, and then they have to go for detox. Detox takes maybe 14 days, and maybe they go to a program that lasts maybe a couple of weeks, a month, maybe, and then they think that they're cured. They're not. They're going to be back to the same old habits. And believe me, the pushers know where they are, and they follow them. And BC, I think there's no persons more despicable than the pushers. They are criminals. They are murderers. And you know what? I know a lot of people are not going to like to hear this. The pushers deserve the electric chair. They ruin lives. They ruin families.
I couldn't agree with you more, Father. We'll be back right after this. Hi, BC Cloutier here. We've got some exciting news for you. On October 19th, at the Naples Grand Beach Resort, Action for Life presents Jim Caviezel live and in person.
Why are you doing it? Because God's children are not for sale.
The star of Sound of Freedom will be here in Naples, telling us all about the filming of the movie and the real-life experiences of Special Agent Tim Ballard.
Hear that? That's the sound of freedom.
Please join us for a lovely evening with dinner and beverages at the Naples Grand Beach Resort on Thursday, October 19th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. Get tickets at actionforlife.org/events. Welcome back to A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm B.C. Cloutier. Father, before the break, we were talking about drug use, and one thing that occurs to me is the number of people that begin using drugs as a form of escapism. Mm-hmm. What is wrong with our society that people can't accept life in a straight frame of mind, that they have to be somehow medicated, whether it's alcohol or narcotics?
Yeah. I'd like to say that the answer is complex. It's not, folks. The answer is very simple. There are a couple of things that we have to point out to. First of all, drugs have been with us from the beginning of time. So let's not say this is something new. However, the number of people using drugs has grown exponentially. Why? I believe it is the breakdown of the family. The family is a tremendous support for people, especially for young people. And in the family, they can get all of those things that they need to live a successful life. What do I mean by that? They have a sense of security in the family. They have parents that should be able to teach them right from wrong. They also have parents who are able to provide them with a good education. The schools have a role in this, and they can have programs in the schools about the dangers of drugs, and some schools do. But let's not say that the harm reduction is the way to go about this. But the schools have to begin to point out, to say, this is what drugs will do to you. This is what drugs will do to destroy your life. And to teach the young people that sometimes you have to say no to your friends and don't hang out with people who are creeps. That's what they are. They're creeps. They're not your friends if they are offering you a smoke of pot. They're not your friends if they're offering you to share a needle. And even the culture of drugs, it has kind of like a built-in sense of fraternity about it, because the sharing of the needle is a way that they say, well, I'm part of this crowd now. No, you're not part of a good crowd. You're part of a bunch of idiots. That's what you are a part of. So you pass that on to your children. Family is extremely, extremely important. The other thing is families have to have some kind of an affiliation with a church. Families have to pass on their faith to their children because, as we said earlier, they have to be in environments, and the church is a good environment for them to meet people who have a wholesome perspective on life. And that when troubles do come, they know how to handle that problem. How do you handle the problem? Well, you go to Jesus and say, hey, Jesus, help me with this problem that I'm having. And churches also have groups, youth groups, that at least you're getting some good guidance there, and you have some good friends there that are going to say, we don't do that sort of thing. We have healthy activities, whatever the healthy activity might be. It might be sports, it might be going to the movies, it might be a reading club, and people are saying, oh, they don't do those things anymore. Well, you know what? That might be the reason why they're getting addicted. They're not doing those nice things anymore.
Right.
And so the family and faith are extremely, extremely important. And to have heroes. Heroes are extremely important. And what we've done in our society today is we have seemed to have knocked down all the heroes. We don't want heroes anymore. So even people that I grew up, I'm admiring George Washington. I'm admiring Abraham Lincoln. I'm admiring some of the great generals in World War I, World War II, General MacArthur. All of these people were like, wow, these are real heroes. And now it seems like we're willing to tear down every monument to every hero we've ever met.
Our new heroes are influencers, social media influencers. People who are famous for doing absolutely nothing except being famous.
Right.
Let's go back to the family. Another thing, I think our audience knows that Action for Life is bringing Jim Caviezel, the star of Sound of Freedom, to Naples in a couple of weeks. Child sex trafficking, another issue that goes back to not having a good family support system.
Right.
Kids are able to be influenced and groomed very easily in single-parent households. Again, by the way, a huge problem that we all sort of knew about, but with Sound of Freedom, it's broken wide open. This is a huge issue, particularly in South Florida.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's breakdown in the family, especially with the one-parent family. Folks, it's very, very hard to raise children with one adult in the house.
Yes, it is.
There really has to be two, and it does a couple of things. The first thing is, again, that sense of security. I have two parents. It gives me a sense of how do people negotiate their way through life. Parents sometimes have disagreements, arguments. They learn from parents how they disagree, how they argue. It doesn't mean I just walk out when things are not going my way. And so children need parents, and parents have to present to the children good role models. If the family breaks down, if there is one parent there, of course, folks, I understand things happen, but it is not the ideal. Kids then can wander off. They go into their room and they play on the internet, and they find people who are very unwholesome and loathsome characters who seduce them into getting involved either with internet pornography or a meeting someplace in town, and then to begin to use that young person for sexual pleasures and sexual satisfaction. They sell the children. They literally sell the children, whether it be physically or on film. That's part of what we see in the movie, The Sound of Freedom.
I was speaking to a former law enforcement officer this week, and he was telling me a story of a 7-year-old girl who was groomed online on one of the social media sites. I don't even know which one. And at some point, her groomer convinced her to take all her clothes off except her underwear and take pictures of herself. Within minutes, they were on the dark web.
Of course.
And they'll be there forever.
Forever. And then, people see them, and sometimes people say, "Oh, I know her." And boy, could you imagine the shame and the terror that goes through a child when they find out that their very compromising pictures are out there online forever and ever. So this is a thing that destroys the psyche of young people, too. They're forever damaged by this. And parents have to be very, very vigilant about this. And as I said, you ever hear the expression, two heads are better than one? Well, that's it. Two heads. Two parents are on top of the situation. They are better than the one parent who possibly is unable to cover all the bases with young people today.
I want to share a little anecdote with you. One of my daughters, who has 3 daughters, 2 of them are teenagers. Actually, one of them's in college now. This is a couple of years ago. She was very concerned with what they were doing. She took the doors off their bedrooms.
Good idea, folks.
Great idea.
Yeah, that's a great. Your daughter's a genius.
They couldn't hide anymore.
Yeah.
She could walk in anytime she wanted and look over their shoulder and say, "What are you doing on the web?"
That's right.
And it's those kinds of radical ideas that we have to put into place to protect our kids.
That, folks, it sounds like, wow, taking the doors off a bedroom. Hey, why not? Why not?
It works.
It works.
I have to tell you, these young women are just beautiful in every aspect because their parents paid attention to them and to what they were doing.
Yeah, and as I said, the stuff that's up there online. I mean, in a million years, like in my day, folks, you had to go to what we call the candy store and try to sneak a peek. But today, holy cow, you got it right in your bedroom.
Unfortunately, yes. We'll be back right after this. Action for Life is proud to sponsor A Conversation with Father Orsi. Action for Life is an all-volunteer, pro-life, interfaith ministry that's focused on the sanctity of life from conception to natural death. In addition to sponsoring this TV program, Action for Life provides financial support and life assistance to any woman who wishes to carry her baby to term in anticipation of an adoption. Action for Life also provides financial assistance to a variety of pro-life organizations, including maternity homes, pregnancy resource centers, anti-human trafficking agencies, and sidewalk advocates, but to name a few. Please consider making a donation so that we can continue in the fight to save preborn babies. You can donate online at actionforlife.org. Thank you and God bless. Welcome back to another episode of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm B.C. Cloutier. Father, we're talking about drugs. We're talking about some of the ills of the world, which are truly ills. Fentanyl is just, I think if I was a young person, I wouldn't want to ingest anything today that didn't come from a pharmacy because of the dangers of overdose.
Sure.
But then we move on to prostitution, which some people call a victimless crime. I wouldn't think the prostitutes would call it a victimless crime.
Yeah. Let's examine what's going on today. First of all, we are now into euphemisms regarding prostitution. It's called sex workers.
Right.
Okay. Now, it is a very dangerous concept because what's going on now, prostitution has kind of a very negative connotation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why do people get into prostitution? And sometimes, I hate to say this, but there are circumstances which a person feels there's nothing else I can do. There is other things that people can do, but let's just go with this story.
And then there are people who are women who are addicted to drugs,
Sure.
who then are forced into prostitution.
Sure. Yeah, sometimes it goes hand in hand because of a pimp that puts them out there and that gives them drugs. But let's take a look at this situation. There was a woman here in Naples a number of years ago. She was picked up for prostitution, and she was brought to court. And the judge said, why were you soliciting men? And she said, because I couldn't feed my children. I didn't have the money for food or rent. Right. You see, sometimes when you hear the other side of the story, this is not just a bad person. This is a person who's kind of up against it, can't figure any other way out of the hole, and so they sell themselves. Of course, it is wrong, it is degrading, but it somewhat mitigates the evil that we might think is inherent in this person who is selling herself. There are other ways for people to survive than to sell yourself, okay? I'm not completely exonerating her, but there are mitigating circumstances in that case. Today, we have a society, as I said, we're using this euphemism, sex worker. It almost legitimizes prostitution. Well, this is my profession now. I am a sex worker.
But we do that with everything. We change the label to make it seem like it isn't what it is.
Right, right. So we have people who now consider themselves sex workers, and that this is somehow a legitimate way of making a living. There's a case up in Long Island, New York. You've heard about this case, folks, where there's a man who was a modern-day Jack the Ripper. And he killed numerous women. I think they discovered maybe 5 or 6 or 7 bodies already, and they think there may be more. But he was soliciting prostitutes online. And then they had pictures of these women. That's a very sad thing. They were very nice-looking young women. They looked like they were in their 20s. And they were listed as sex workers, all right?
Yep.
Now, to call them sex workers, again, that's the whole concept of this is somehow legitimate now, but it's also something that says it is a victimless crime. Well, there are victims involved. The first victim, of course, is the woman herself. She doesn't know what she is stepping into. And the second thing is that not only is the woman putting herself in danger, but more than that, she is somehow being used to legitimate a profession that degrades humanity. And if we're going to allow that and say, well, that's now another form of work, and therefore we can accept a sex worker, and there's nothing wrong with that, what does that do to the rest of us? So you see, folks, the implication is the woman is in trouble. The John certainly, he's going to get in trouble sooner or later, and certainly society becomes downgraded. You know, there's an old expression, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Mm-hmm. What do you think that means, folks? That people are playing poker?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Well, do you have final thoughts about this, Father? It's a complicated issue.
It really is. You know, you read from St. Paul. He gives a whole list of things that degrade humanity, you know, from the alcohol to the drugs to the prostitution. There's a whole list there of things that debauch us. And we said, you know, what are some of the solutions to this? And let's be clear, folks, family is a big solution, all right? Keep your family intact. If you get married, and if you are married, make sure that you're able to work things out between husband and wife, because it's not just for the two of you, it's for the good of the children. Number 2, belong to a church, okay? Belong to a church. Belong to a church or to a synagogue, and make sure that you practice your faith in some way. Teach children how to say their prayers. When they find themselves tempted and they find themselves in trouble, at least they'll have a refuge in our Lord Jesus Christ, and they'll have a faith-based community that can help them to overcome the problem. So, yeah, St. Paul gave us a whole long list of things, but remember, St. Paul wrote in the context of Jesus Christ, that Jesus Christ is the solution to all of these problems that degrade human life.
Join us again next week for another edition of A Conversation with Father Orsi. Until then, have a great week, and we hope to see you next week. Hi, BC Cloutier here. We've got some exciting news for you. On October 19th, at the Naples Grand Beach Resort, Action for Life presents Jim Caviezel live and in person.
Why are you doing it? Because God's children are not for sale.
The star of Sound of Freedom will be here in Naples, telling us all about the filming of the movie and the real-life experiences of Special Agent Tim Ballard.
Hear that? That's the sound of freedom.
Please join us for a lovely evening with dinner and beverages at the Naples Grand Beach Resort on Thursday, October 19th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. Get tickets at actionforlife.org/events.